People tell me they want more emotional intimacy in their romantic relationships, and I think that sounds great, but what does that mean? What is it? What collection of characteristics is it? How do we start doing it? Like, what steps do we take? We're gonna talk about that today. I did a little survey of my email list, and they came up with some great definitions of what emotional intimacy is. So let's dig into that today. I'm Stacy Rocklein, and I'm on a mission to eradicate loneliness. And emotional intimacy is like the antidote to loneliness when we feel really emotionally connected to someone else. But I am curious about what that definition is, because it might mean one thing to one person and something else to another person. And if they're in a relationship with each other, there could be some discord there. So I thought, who better to ask than the thousands of people on my email list? And I got tons of responses. I just asked a simple open-ended question, like, what is emotional intimacy? And the answers were awesome. Lots of repetitive answers, but I just made a list of all the different ways they described it. And I want to go through that list with you today. So I'm going to look at notes over here. The first one was vulnerability. And we hear that word, but what does it mean? I'll just give you my kind of definitions of these things, or the way I think about them. When I think of something as being vulnerable, it's like unprotected, right? If you're a crab without a shell, then you are vulnerable to getting hurt. So there is a lack of protection. It's risky. And so when someone is vulnerable, they aren't fully protected. There is a possibility that they can get hurt. And vulnerability for this person is going to be different from this person. So even the nuances inside that word itself are going to be very dependent on each individual in the relationship. But it's putting yourself out there even though it puts you at risk, is how I think about it. Openness was one. And, you've met someone who's just guarded and closed. You can feel it in their energy. And I think of openness as being the opposite, right? They've opened their heart to some degree. Emotional connection. So I think about this as really knowing what the other person is feeling. It's sort of like empathy. It's like you understand their emotion, you can feel their emotion. And they went further to say there's nonverbal emotional connection. So that's like something that you feel. There's verbal emotional connection, where we're talking about our feelings together. And then physical emotional connection, where you're really kind of feeling that love between you. Trust. This is huge, especially if you're going to be vulnerable. You have to be able to trust that the other person is really going to try not to hurt you. They're probably not going to hurt you, and they're definitely not going to do it intentionally. So you have to have that trust there so you can be open and vulnerable. Support. That means whatever's going on with you, I want to be your cheerleader. I want to be here to help. I want to be here to help you have a safe place to land, and vice versa. So we can't just live two island lives. We have to be supporting each other in our endeavors and our experiences and what's going on in our lives. Safety. This is similar to trust, but it's sort of like a bedrock. I think of it as like, it's there. It's when you put fences around things, like when you do that boundaries, that circle of safety from boundaries. It's when you've put up some measures that they're going to keep each person safe in the relationship and in the risk taking that they're going to do to have this emotional intimacy. Honesty. Right after honesty, I'm going to talk about transparency, and these are different. Transparency is kind of like no secrets, right? I'm not keeping secrets from you. You're not keeping secrets from me. Transparency is on this list also. But honesty is a little different. It's when you're telling the truth. When you get asked a question, you tell the truth about how you feel. When you just feel like the other person needs to know something, you tell them the truth about how you feel. You're actually sharing. Whereas transparency is just going through life, being open to that person, like an open book kind of way, not just openness, but it's being able to say, like, yeah, here's my phone, right? Here are all the text messages between me and my girlfriends, and I haven't disparaged you. I haven't called you names or said anything bad about you. And I'm not suggesting that all couples share their phones. You guys know what's right for you, but it is that transparency of there are no secrets. But then honesty is that you tell the truth. You tell the truth about how you feel. Peaceful conflict resolution. Really important. I mean, we're going to occasionally lose our cool. That's just humanity, and that's okay. And that might be losing our cool and shutting down and going inward, or losing our cool and pushing it out. But for the most part, most of your conflict resolution should feel peaceful. It should feel like we can talk about stuff. We are emotionally connected enough that I can share this problem I'm having with you, and you can receive it, and we can solve it together. And you can share your problem with me, and we can solve that together. So it's got a peaceful nature to it. It doesn't mean no conflict, right? There is always going to be some conflict, but it's done in a peaceful way. It's resolved in a peaceful way. Lack of righteousness. Oh my gosh, this is really huge. When you are right and wronging each other and you're focused on fairness, that emotional connection, that emotional intimacy gets kind of broken apart. It is really important that we're not making the other person wrong. We can disagree with each other, but that doesn't mean that we have to make someone wrong or make someone feel wrong or come in and be like my way or the highway and righteous about things. We want to make space for everybody in our relationship. And that just like automatically, it's an automatic disconnection, because to make yourself right is to make the other person wrong. And that's going to put up a wall no matter what. Understanding. I mean, this is huge. This is when you want to really get it. You're listening, you're trying to understand what the person experienced and how they feel. And you're asking questions to clarify that you get it, and you're validating them. Like they really feel seen and you feel really seen. That is emotional intimacy so much. Tolerance. Okay, really important. We are two different people. We have different ways that we navigate the world. We have different things that set us off. We have different opinions. We have to have tolerance for the other person. They're not going to be exactly like that, exactly like us. So we have to leave space for them to be different. We have to be tolerant of those differences. Authenticity. Authenticity is huge. I think about it like this. Like my son used to tell me, Mom, I hate when you use your suburban mom voice. And it was him picking up on the fact that in some settings, I have a mask on, right? That's lack of authenticity. It's when you can tell the other person is putting up something that isn't purely, truthfully them, or they're holding some part of themselves back. We do have to be authentic, because we can't build a close relationship with somebody if we don't really feel like this is them, this is who they are, this is who I am. So that authenticity is super important too. Warmth. Okay, this one's really big, and I hadn't even thought of it until I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, completely. You have to feel this emotional connection that has a warmth to it. The love is something you can feel. It's not just words. It's not just a concept. It's not just something like, I know they love me, but it's like you actually like feel that warmth. Super important. Calm. Calm is when everybody's nervous system is regulated, right? It's not frenetic. I mean, not that you don't get excited about stuff together. That's not what I mean, but you just don't feel like you're in a constant emotional chaos or landmines and battlefield. Things do feel calm, and you feel that you can keep yourself calm in this emotional connection. And the last thing that I think is really important that they reported back to me was the ability to share everything and anything without being judged. And they said, like, the worst parts, my fears, my failures, and the other person just receives you. And you're able to do that back to them. Like the emotional intimacy, that's right where it is. It's where I can expose myself to you. I can share the things that I want to share. I can like help you get to know me. and you are not going to judge me for how I am. And then I'm also going to be able to suspend my judgment no matter what you share with me. And you take all of these things and throw them in a bowl, and there apparently you have emotional intimacy. But my question for you is this. When you think about that list, you might have been thinking about things that you're lacking in, or you're really good at, or more likely you're thinking about your partner or spouse or whatever and thinking about where they fall short and going, yep, not that, not that, not that. But I think it's really interesting as humans that the things that we desire the most, that we feel we don't have, are often showing us something about ourselves. So for example, I like want to know everything about the people that I'm close to. I want you to reveal your deepest feelings and fears and dreams. I want that so bad. Like I crave that in another person in order for me to feel emotionally intimate with them. But it's also something that I really struggle with. Like if I was giving myself a grade on that, it wouldn't be an amazing grade. I have to really work at it. So what I'm suggesting is, as you think about all those things on the list, like don't overwhelm yourself and be like, I need to go get good at these whatever dozen skills. Just pick one that you feel is lacking and ask yourself how you can get better at it. If you're like, yeah, my spouse is definitely not showing up in the warmth department, are you showing up in the warmth department? Sometimes we wait for the other person to do it first and then we'll do it back, but we have to go first in our relationships. We have to be the first one willing to work on something, and we can't control them, so we can just go inside and ask ourselves, how can I get better at pick something from the list? And if you just start working on each little thing at a time, you'll be taking the steps forward to start to create that emotional intimacy that you're craving in your relationships. So break it down, make it small, pick something that you want more of, and become more of that. And if you want to be a part of my little survey list, from time to time I ask my email list questions because I want to know what their thoughts are on stuff. It's just an amazing place for me to gather information, and it's one of my favorite things to read their responses. So make sure that you get on my newsletter that I send out every Tuesday with just advice, tips, resources, and sometimes questions for you to answer that I get to compile into something like this that I can share with you on YouTube or back to my newsletter. So do that, and I wish you emotional intimacy one little step at a time. I'll see you next time.